£800 million. Not just this year, not just next year, but for as long as the government would want to maintain any sort of presence on the US-UK Air Force base Diego Garcia. But it's not just £800 million every single year, no, also reparations are being demanded by Mauritius of the British taxpayer. Could you be sending billions upon billions, tens of billions, over decade after decade after decade to an East African country? Well, that is on the cards now as the Chagos Islands deal appears to be getting even worse for the British taxpayer. Yes, the new government of Mauritius is demanding more money for the privilege of the United Kingdom handing over sovereign territory. Yes, the Chagos archipelago in the middle of the Indian Ocean could well be handed over to the new Mauritian government, Mauritius, a country over 1,000 miles away from the Chagos archipelago, might I add, but it all could be handed away thanks to the new approach led by this UK government. Many different arguments have been put forward that there have been votes at the UN, advisory rulings of international lawyers. But ultimately, of course, it is up to the UK government to decide whether or not it cedes territory to another power. And extraordinarily, in this case, in the case of the Chagos Islands, in the case of the most significant military base in that part of the world, Diego Garcia, it seems that the UK government is tripping over itself to try and give away this territory, but not just give it away for the privilege of also giving away money. Billions upon billions of pounds. Your money. Why could this be? Well, when Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, in a surprise move, he appointed a friend of his as Attorney General. Gone was Emily Thornberry. She was booted out of the shadow cabinet. Instead, Richard Hermer became Attorney General, a close friend of Sir Keir Starmer. They go back years as lawyers together. But he has a philosophy in terms of international law, and that's that international law should be superior to British law. That the rulings, even advisory rulings of international courts, should be adhered to over and above what some might see to be the British national interest. Now that is a philosophy that seems to be running away with itself in terms of the UK giving up territory and giving up money. An extraordinary position for the UK to be in, but it goes deeper than that, because there's another man that we need to look at in all of this. This is Philippe Sands. He's acting as the main lawyer for the Mauritian government. But while he acts as the lawyer for the Mauritian government negotiating against the United Kingdom, he's also a close friend of our Prime Minister. Yes, Philippe attends football matches with Sir Keir Starmer. They go back years. They've been international lawyers together. And now, a close friend of the British Prime Minister is advising the Mauritian government in its negotiations against the UK. It seems very curious that such a close friend of the British Prime Minister is working in what many people would see against British national interests. Well, earlier on GBNews, we spoke to the international security expert Henry Bolton all about this. It seems extraordinary that we have the Prime Minister's most senior advisors flying over there trying to rush it all through. What on earth is going on?
That's a very good question. You were talking in an earlier piece just before the news there about unforced errors on the part of Kemi Badenoch. This is an unforced error that it was initiated by the last Conservative government and has been given additional impetus by the Labour government. And what actually lies behind it is difficult to ascertain because, okay, so the Chagos Islands are a large archipelago of islands. There's many small islands, but a large number of them. They're about 1,500 miles away from Mauritius, which is the country that the UK is considering handing sovereignty of these islands to. And on one of these islands, there is this base, Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia was built up massively during the Cold War and during the Vietnam War, and the Americans used it as a strategic base from which to bomb North Vietnam and so on, and Cambodia. Since then, it has been the primary US and UK base to project into the Indian Ocean region. That remains an incredibly important asset because of Chinese irredentism, their expansion into that region in the South China Sea. Now, given that context and the fact that there is no compelling reason that anybody can actually see that's in the public domain as to why the United Kingdom would want to cede sovereignty of these islands, I mean, it's a big puzzle. And then add to this the revelation that Mauritius is demanding 800 million plus billions in reparations. It seems nonsensical. Now, the government claims that the base will be more secure if this deal is done than it would be otherwise whilst it's under British sovereignty. Again, nonsensical. I sense that we're not getting half of the story here. Yeah. There is another reason. Now, people will point, just it needs to be said, will point to a United Nations General Assembly resolution that said that ideally these islands should be passed to Mauritius. But there was all sorts of political lobbying there that involved the Chinese, and it is not a binding decision by any means.
But Henry, is this not the point? This UN vote where 94 countries voted on the side of Mauritius and just 15 on the side of the UK. The vast majority of UN member states did not vote in that vote, it must be said.
Correct.
And of course the international rulings, the international court's non-binding rulings. But is it not the case that Keir Starmer, a human rights lawyer who's worked internationally, has appointed the Attorney General, Richard Hermer, who prioritises international law above all else? Is it not the case that we now have a government that prioritises even these advisory rulings as if they're binding? Well, will this deal be rushed through before the 20th of January, before Donald Trump becomes the United States president? Could Donald Trump, in the end, veto this deal and try and stop the UK giving away so much money and so much territory that is crucial not just to British interests, but to American interests too? Some big questions here that are yet to be answered, but it does seem that the British government and the Mauritian government are rushing towards a deal that could cost you, me, and everyone else in the UK dearly. Not just in cash, not just in billions of pounds, but in sovereign territory and international influence too. Much still to be decided. We're keeping a close eye on it here at GB News, so don't forget to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel for much, much more.